Hello, everybody. Some viewers of the video I posted yesterday regarding the situation in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have asked me to do it again, but in English this time, as they had difficulties in understanding what I was saying. Usually, I don't post on HervéTV English versions of each and every video I post because it's time consuming. I prefer from time to time posting videos in English, but most of the time it's true, it's in French. But this time I believe the situation in Congo deserves that I spend a little bit of time translating at least what I said yesterday. I didn't prepare anything in English, so I will just read what I was telling yesterday, but this time in English. Sorry for the mistakes I might make in English, because as I said, I didn't prepare anything. So here it is. In my radio and video program of 2 weeks ago, which I prepared when I came back from Brazil, I was expressing my anger and my worries about the situation in Goma, where the Rwandese troops and their allies from an armed group called M23 had just entered. Ever since, I've been following up day after day the evolution of the situation on the ground. The Rwandese army and their allies from M23 have strengthened their positions in Goma itself and have continued their advances elsewhere, especially towards the south, following the bank of the shores of Lake Kivu, the western shores, that great lake which is located between the two countries, Rwanda and Congo. Since my last program of 2 weeks ago about the situation, terrible news have started emerging from Goma. During the battle for Goma and following the entrance of the Rwandese troops and their allies, more than 3,000 people, men, women and children, have been reported dead, victims of the fightings or victims of deliberate killings perpetrated by the invaders. The streets of Goma were littered with dead bodies, and the mortuary actually of the hospital was more than full. Mass burials had to be organized quickly in order to avoid the spread of contagious diseases such as cholera. The occupying forces have started dismantling the huge camps of displaced people, which were located to the north and the west of Goma city, and where nearly 1 million displaced persons were staying. All those people had fled months after months, weeks after weeks, the areas controlled by M23, and they had fled also the offensives from that armed group as well as the fighting. Therefore, they could only be considered by the invaders as hostile elements. There is no doubt in my mind that some of those displaced persons are among the deads that I have mentioned, the 3,000 people reported as dead. The de facto authorities which are controlling the city for the past 2 weeks have done their best to convince, I put quote and unquote, before and after convince, the displaced people to return home, to return to their home areas. Some of them have nevertheless found refuge in the Goma churches or around the Goma churches. The few humanitarian organizations still present in the city have distributed whatever was left in their stocks, in their warehouses, be it food or non-food items. Some of those warehouses had been looted when the invaders entered Goma. Ever since, Goma didn't receive any food supply. Malnutrition, which was already present among the population, might therefore become a real famine in the next few days or weeks. The people of Goma live in fear, and the rest of the world is just publishing a few communiques, a few statements which never point finger to the real aggressor, that is the Kigali regime. In my program of 2 weeks ago, I had expressed fear for the friends and people that I know in Goma. Today, I have to express the same fear about my friends and the people that I know in Bukavu, the main town of the province of South Kivu, because the Rwandese forces and their allies from M23 have pushed towards the south, clearly targeting Bukavu, a city where I lived in the past. The villages and trading centers located on the shores of Lake Kivu have been captured one after the other by the Rwandese forces and the M23, and the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo have once again proved that they were unable to resist or to push back the invaders. The Congolese army has been suffering forever from corruption, from bad management, from disorganization, lack of motivation. Worse, some militias allied to the Congolese army have themselves committed crimes against the civilian population, lootings or killings. Regarding the threats against Bukavu, one should not be mistaken. The day dictator Paul Kagame would have decided to capture Bukavu, Bukavu will fall. Just like Goma, Bukavu is located right on the border with Rwanda. While the international attention is focusing on the advance, on the offensive from the Rwandese army and M23 along the shore of Lake Kivu, in reality, Kagame only has to give an order for his troops massed in Changugu, the neighboring city, in Rwanda, to cross the border. That's what happened in 1996, during the first Rwandese invasion. That's what happened again in 2004, when the Rwandese army occupied Bukavu for a short period of time. And that's what can happen anytime if Kagame believes it is the right time to do it. I am in permanent contact with my friends in Bukavu. They keep me informed daily about the evolution of the situation on the ground. Not knowing what will happen soon in Bukavu, I have decided not to mention any name, and I will not use audios. You will not hear their voices in order to preserve the security of the witnesses. I will therefore just read what I have received. Here is a text that I received on Tuesday, 11th February. I am presently in Bukavu. After the attack and the fall of the city of Goma on 27th and 28th January, everybody believed that Bukavu would be the next target for the armed group M23 and its Rwandese sponsors. The fall of Bukavu has created panic among the population in Bukavu. Some Bukavu inhabitants have started fleeing towards Burundi and Tanzania, and those who went to Tanzania, of course, had to cross Burundi first. Those were the people who had financial means to organize such a trip. But the majority of the population cannot afford fleeing and therefore has to remain in Bukavu, expecting the worst to happen. On the security side, it is clear that the city of Goma and the province of North Kivu were better equipped, militarily speaking, and better protected than our province of South Kivu. Nevertheless, the Rwandese army and its M23 puppets were able to enter the city of Goma. It is therefore obvious that if nothing is being done in Bukavu, the same thing will happen in Bukavu. We are strongly encouraging our authorities to improve the salaries of our soldiers and to improve the welfare of their families. With the very poor salaries that they get, our soldiers are sometimes lacking motivation. That's why many cases of desertions were recorded within the ranks of the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Many of those soldiers have families and they prefer to return home in order to protect their families because the authorities are doing nothing to take care of the soldiers' families. 3 days ago, an armed group called Wazalendo and a few members of the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo have caused trouble within the city of Bukavu. Before that, they had killed 10 people in Kavumu. Kavumu is a place where the Bukavu airport is located. Among the victims, some young businessmen were reported to have been killed. In Bukavu itself, those armed group members have committed the same type of crimes against some street sellers, especially those who are selling their goods along the streets and avenues of Bukavu. The provincial authorities and the military authorities have done their best to capture those criminals, and right now a trial is being organized in Bukavu. As a result, the city is calm again, and the commercial activities have resumed normally. In the schools, the pupils and students are still studying as usual. It is the exam periods, and those exams have taken place without any problem. But many new pupils and students have been recorded. They are from Goma. They are probably the children of the families which had managed to flee Goma at the last minute before the arrival of the Rwandese troops and the so-called rebels. What we hope for the next few days is that the city of Goma is liberated. We are not expecting, we are not hoping for, of course, for the fall of Bukavu. Nobody is hoping such a terrible development. We are not ready to experience again a foreign occupation in Bukavu. And I know that the population of Goma is dreaming every day of the aggressors' departure and the liberation of the city from foreign occupation. This is the text I received from Bukavu, from a Bukavu resident. I received it on 11th February. You may have understood the danger which is threatening this important city. Unfortunately, the offensive from the Rwandese troops and their allies from M23 is not only concentrating on South Kivu. In North Kivu, the invaders have launched a new offensive, this time towards the north, particularly in the territory of Lubero. Worse, in Ituri, the neighboring province north of North Kivu, a resumption of fighting and new massacres have been reported. Those terrible developments are taking place in the background of ethnic, tribal hatred between, I'm going to simplify a little bit, but it's mainly between militias from the Lendu tribe, who are mainly cultivators, and the militias from the Hema tribes, who are partly cattle keepers. I know that situation in Ituri very well, because in 2001 I had been involved in the demobilization program for child soldiers from Ituri who had been conscripted by the militias and taken to Uganda for military training. I even know some of those warlords and leaders of ethnic militias, because at the time I had to negotiate with them in order to get the demobilization of the children. One of them, one of those warlords, is Thomas Lubanga. Thomas Lubanga was the first person to be sentenced by the ICC, the International Criminal Court in The Hague. He had been arrested in March 2006 and transferred to prison in The Hague. He was charged for war crimes, mainly the conscription of children aged less than 15-year-old. His trial took place between 26 January 2009 and 26 August 2011 in The Hague. And myself, I was invited by the prosecution as a witness. In order to do it, I had to travel to the Netherlands from Abéché in Chad, where I was working at the time. I keep very bad memories of that experience because defense lawyers kept interrupting me with so-called objections in order to invalidate my testimony, or even to prevent me from speaking. On 14th March 2012, the ICC gave its first verdict by declaring Thomas Lubanga guilty of conscription of children aged less than 15-year-old and for forcing them to participate in fighting. On 10th July 2012, the ICC sentenced Thomas Lubanga to 14 years in prison. The duration of his detention started from the day of his arrest, and therefore he was freed as early as 15th March 2020. When he arrived in Kinshasa, Thomas Lubanga was received by the Congolese president Félix Tshisekedi in an attempt to restore peace in Ituri. In June 2024, the armed forces of the Democratic Republic of Congo accused Lubanga to be supporting a new armed group, a new HEMA armed group called Zaire. In January 2025, in their report, the United Nations experts group mentioned the name of Thomas Lubanga and stated that he was linked to the M23. Lubanga at the time was reported to be staying in Kampala in Uganda, and he was also reported to have installed training camps for the militia, for the Zaire militia in Ituri and in Uganda, with the support from Rwanda. Kigali's hand, and probably Kampala's hand, is therefore involved in this resumption of violence in Ituri. Another warlord that I have known at the time when I was working for the demobilization of child soldiers, would also be involved in this resumption of violence in Ituri, is Chief Yves Kawapandro. And Chief Kawa is also reported to have close links with Paul Kagame's regime in Kigali. History is repeating itself, it is often said. And this is very true in the case of the tragic events taking place in Eastern DRC, both in Kivu and in Ituri. The former humanitarian staff and observers of this region of the African Great Lakes, including myself, therefore have the very sad feeling of déjà vu. The same actors of the current crisis are often the same actors than during previous crises since 1996. And the overall sponsor and instigator is also the same. That is, of course, Paul Kagame, with the support from the de facto president for life of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, who took power in Uganda in January 1986, almost 40 years ago. But internationally speaking, Paul Kagame is not in such a good position during this current crisis. It's not exactly like during the previous ones. More and more voices throughout the world are denouncing the direct implication of his army in the events taking place in Eastern Congo. And some European countries have even started reducing their financial support to Kigali. And on the ground, there are two countries which are challenging Kagame's operation, militarily speaking. That is South Africa, which had sent a contingent from its army on the ground in Kivu some time back. Several South African soldiers have been killed during the fall of Goma. 14 dead bodies of South African soldiers have been flown back to South Africa. And the diplomatic tension between South Africa and Rwanda is therefore very high. On the other side, Burundi has also sent its army in Kivu, and it's efficiently facing the Rwandese army and M23 in the province of South Kivu. The current fighting could therefore transform itself in a regional war, and it's not certain that small Rwanda will win that war, if at all it becomes a regional war. In the context of the current crisis, France's role is very ambiguous. The French president keeps trying to maintain his close ties with Paul Kagame and at the same time having good relations with the DRC, but he failed by refusing to clearly state who is the aggressor, contrary to what he has done in the case of Ukraine. Emmanuel Macron has unfortunately caused a rise in the anti-French feeling in the DRC among the Congolese people. France, since Emmanuel Macron is the president, France had to leave, at least military speaking, but not only, countries such as Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Senegal, and recently Chad. France, therefore, risks in this crisis to completely lose its credibility in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the largest French-speaking country in the world. That was what I was saying yesterday in my radio and video program in French. I hope you have understood my English, and don't hesitate in commenting this video in English. And please subscribe to my HervéTV channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.